Uh, Hello. It's Sunday afternoon, the first Sunday of Advent, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I hope your Thanksgiving was reasonably happy and peaceful. Mine was. We had Mass at 10, and there were a number of people that came, and then I was going to be alone, and my sister and brother-in-law and nephew were going to be alone, but my sister fixed some food for me, and I fixed food for her. She fixed me, I don't know if you want to hear this, mashed potatoes and my mother's dressing and green beans and sweet potatoes and stuff, and then I fixed Brussels sprouts, everyone's favorite, but I made it different this year. I used some little thin shallots sliced and prosciutto that Nick Shamo gave me, and Brussels sprouts and maple syrup and grainy mustard. And I don't know if they liked it. I got to ask that. I liked mine. And then I made one cauliflower dish with, you take whole lemons and you quarter them and you squirt the lemon juice in and put some garlic cloves in and olive oil and you break them into florets and you kind of roast that. And then the other one I did with mozzarella cheese. Cauliflower and mozzarella cheese. It was supposed to have cream, but I used skim milk, so it wasn't probably as the recipe envisioned. But anyway, it was Thanksgiving, and it was different, I'm sure. Not everybody, but, well, for everybody it had to be different. It's just a whole different world that we're in these days. In parish life, last week we had a lot of funerals, 2 funerals Monday, a funeral Tuesday. We were supposed to have a funeral on Wednesday, but some of the family members tested positive for COVID, so that's been delayed. Friday after Thanksgiving, I baptized a young adult and confirmed that person, and as is the custom. And Saturday, I had 2 funerals, one at St. Marie Goretti and the other at a funeral home. And today, Sunday, I have another funeral this evening at 5:30. I love doing them. It's very different, of course, because you can't see faces and you can't freely interact, although I think we're getting better at it. Some of the words of remembrance at church are really, really good, and some of the conversations in the cemeteries and funeral homes are good. But today is the first Sunday of Advent, and Advent means a whole lot of things. I'm just going to kind of ramble through some questions in my mind. You know, we talk about Christmas as the coming of Christ, but then you got to take our theology that, you know, Christ is the Word, and in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and nothing came into being except through the Word. We need to remember that the institutions and the rituals that we establish are important, but they are rituals, and they are not, they are rituals that point to, hopefully, or bring forward, hopefully, a mystery or a reality that we do not fully understand, or a reality or a mystery that operates not so much according to the rules of the physical, social, economic, psychological world that we mostly inhabit, but the mystery of the rituals of Catholicism essentially point to the workings of the Spirit. And so we do not believe, for instance, that Christ is going to be born again. And the 2 Gospels that talk about Jesus being born, Matthew and Luke, are both very, very different. This year we'll hear more from Luke, but by the time we get to Christmas, people don't really listen much anymore anyway. That's okay, that's just what happens. But we need to remember that over the years, sometimes the rituals have become detached from the mysteries that they were meant to deal with. And the church oftentimes has been the one responsible for detaching them, because we made these feasts into almost like historical commemorations, and that's not what ritual does. It doesn't historically commemorate as much as it makes present in the present what happened or is happening. Advent, by any means, is characterized by a number of things. Most prominent in many places is probably the Advent wreath. From the beginning, I won't say from the beginning, but certainly in the Middle Ages, at least in the monasteries, many of the monasteries of Europe, Advent was a penitential fasting period of time of maybe a few days, not 4 weeks necessarily, in preparation for Christmas. And then there were times of, even in the Western Christianity, where people only went to communion 2 or 3 times a year, and Christmas would have been one of those times. And so Advent would have been a penitential season in many places. But also, again, then there were always the people, the monks and the nuns, that had more creative imaginations, and they would take some of the biblical texts literally, like the part of what could have been the gospel for today talks about when the fig tree begins to bud, then you know summer's near. Well, it was quite common for various monks and nuns to take branches of flowering trees, apple, cherry, what have you, and bring them into the monastic chapel and try and time their budding or their flowering with the actual date of Christmas. And so those became rituals that were associated with the realities of nature, the workings of nature, but anticipating them, kind of hurrying them up. And there's that sense as part of Advent too, where there's a hastening. We want to quicken our appreciation, quicken our intensity in terms of being disciples of Christ. And so the forcing of the flowering branches was a ritual that manifested that desire, that appetite, that hope, that dimension of Christian life. And then there were in various and sundry places the custom of taking a single wheel off of the cart or a plow that you were not going to be using because the fields were going to be fallow. It was winter, and you would hang that wheel in your home over. Most homes were very simple. You'd hang it in the central room, which might have been the only room, as a reminder, that a concrete reminder that while you couldn't use it now, that life would return, that the seasons would unfold as they do, and the growing season, the sowing season would, and the harvesting season would once again return in a cyclical manner. Probably from that is where we got to the Advent wreath, and then we put greens on it, which kind of combined both of those earlier traditions of trying to find, force life in the budding of a branch, and in the circle, which is a symbol. The circle is a symbol of divine perfection in a world of angular imperfection. That's why our baptismal font is circular. That's why rose windows appeared in cathedrals. They weren't so much architecturally innovative. They came from the unconscious mind of the architects and the designers. That's why Stonehenge, if you've ever been to Stonehenge, is a circle. You see crop circles. Those, again, can have many different meanings, I understand, but in the unconscious mind of the human adventure, the circular has always been something was a hopeful sign, the return, the cyclical nature of life. And so the wreath, more than likely, I think, came into Catholic practice and the Catholic imagination in the popular Catholic imagination in the 60s and 70s, when we began to change the way we taught Catholicism in schools and looked for things besides just apologetical questions and answers. We looked for other, what we call maybe sacramentals, light and darkness, oil. We started anointing lots of things in those days, anointing people, and we look for tangible, more readily available to our 20th century imagination experience as we tried to make the liturgy a more meaningful part of human life, and to a greater or lesser degree it's happened, but not perfectly. So in this Advent season, we have the 4 weeks that have been, if you're doing the candles, 3 purple, 1 pink. The pink is the third Sunday of Advent, because we're getting real close and we can begin to lighten up on the somberness of it. In my own experience, I've always thought Advent was probably the saddest time of the year, because as families moved towards Christmas, knowing there would be empty places at the table from the last Christmas, I always think that was a sad time of the year. At least in my life, it was not maudlin, but a little bit melancholic. And then, of course, the shortness of the days and would lend itself to that. Driving around, and walking around, all kinds of people have Christmas stuff up. I know people are starved this year for something new, something different, something other than the COVID and the anxiety and all that goes into that, and the arguments. People are just starved for Christmas. We have lights outside the church. They're not on yet. I'm resisting a little bit, but our maintenance guys and Irene and Debbie have worked really hard to make the property shine and glow, hopefully a little bit, because we really need that this year. I understand that. Going forward to Christmas, I anticipate it's going to be different. I really hope I'm terribly wrong, but I suspect that the Thanksgiving holiday will prove to be a source of more infection and more virus spread and more sadness, but we'll see. Peace be with you.